And we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Deceive reality podcast. We are here with the incredible magician, Ali Cook. Ali, how are you doing?
I'm cool. How are you doing? You all right?
Good. Yeah, this is that way. We're all reversed, so it looks weird.
Oh, so I should be looking this way. Or that way.
If you raise your arm, it really freaks you out.
Yeah. I'll just look straight down the camera. Okay.
Yeah, that'll work. So I guess we'll start at the beginning where we always start, which is how did you get into magic to begin with?
So I had an unusual upbringing in magic. My mum had a New Age bookshop in Harrogate in North Yorkshire. And I was working in that shop. And one day, a couple of magic books came in, rather than like real magic books, but rather Expert at the Card Table came in there, and the Peter Eldin book came in there as well. And as well as that, I also got a magic set from Paul Daniels, and also I got a copy of the Ali Bongo Book of Magic in Asda as well. So a bit of a mixture. Yeah.
That's an all-round, full, complete magical career there that you need. There's no real way to work with that.
So many of us can relate to the Paul Daniels magic set, or the one with the plastic hat.
Yes, yeah. What it was for me was you had these half shell little billiard balls molded out of plastic. And I learned it right in the back of the instructions was the old equipment move like this to make a ball appear. I actually learned it. I did it at a friend's Cub Scout show, and everyone went, and I was more amazed than they were that I'd amazed them. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I can do this. That I had that feeling that I could actually just sort of deceive people, and that it worked, because that whole when you think about that, it seems so simple in a way, and then that was the real first taste that I could actually be a magician.
I think everybody gets that when you first fool someone and you realize, oh, this stuff actually works. It's not just like,
well, you don't have because when you know the secret and you're a layman, you're like, no way, there's no way anyone would know. Everyone could guess it, but we all know that the brain's wired in a certain way, and it's still stuck. I think Paul Daniels said it best. The tricks that are amazed today were amazing in ancient Egypt, and it's true. You do the chop cup on anyone now, even though we live in a world with mobile phones and communications like this. You do Don Allen's chop cup, no one has a clue. It's just so weird. Yeah,
it's a real classic.
Yeah, it translates. I mean, obviously, Paul Daniels made it very much his own with his performance.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was interesting. The thing I found interesting about Paul Daniels is he said that he would keep doing the single ball from the pocket to the cup as an opener, because in a lot of working men's clubs, everyone was talking.
Yeah. And
it was the antithesis of all advice you get as an opening trick for a magician. They always say, do something quick and snappy. And I learned the hard way as well from performing live that that's the last thing you ever do, is do anything quick and snappy. You can only do that if you're in a theatre and you've got theatre conditions, but we mostly work in, like either comedy clubs or at corporate events where you spend the first 10 minutes really getting the crowd to focus. And that, if you watch his routine, that's what he does. He just gets them to focus over a few minutes. And then when he thinks they're ready, bang, then comes the big load. Yeah.
Yeah. Such a good performance.
It is.
Yeah. That is the thing. We do perform in places where people aren't expecting us to be performing, and they're not ready for performance, unlike in a theatre show. But it's definitely a thing. It's even like in close-up where people say, just as you're walking through, open up the fire wallet, and then people's attention will be drawn to you rather than you fighting for their attention. I think it's the same on stage.
It is, yeah. It's a big distinction. I've done both. So I've done. I mean, usually you spend most of your time performing, and people, and most of the entertainment is ancillary to the event. Yeah. That's a whole different ball game than when people come to see you. And that only started happening for me when I started performing in Edinburgh, and then later I did the Impossible show. And they're both hard and they're both easy in other ways. So the hard thing, bizarrely, about when you've got all the attention is, my God, you really have got all the attention, and you feel quite vulnerable, actually. You know, and in the Impossible show, it was interesting. There was quite a few close-up magicians in there, but doing close-up for 700 people with about 5 cameras on you, where there's no direction and you can hear a pin drop. It's very different than doing walk around. And I wouldn't say it's harder. It's just different. It's much more like being on the radio. You say something, no reply. You know, it's an odd situation to be in for close up.
Yeah, definitely. I even find that with Zoom that people be muted and you perform, and it's like, did you like it? Or it's just silence after, especially when you try and make a gag that you're like off the cuff. And I was like, no, I don't know if it worked or not.
Yeah, I haven't done that many Zoom shows, but I did one recently, and it was for like a company that they sort out the software for selling things online. And I was booked by this woman who she's like a model who sells fitness equipment on Instagram or something like that. And they're all chatting, getting pissed. And then suddenly about 4:30 in the afternoon, bam, I just land in there. And then you're just expected to do a show. It's so odd. And I mean, the great thing, though, if you get a heckler, you can just bang, mute them, can't you? Oh, what was that? Oh, we lost him. You know, so the real beauty. But Zoom, it's very much like performing on telly.
Yeah.
It actually gives people that... if you've not done TV before, it gives you that real feeling of what it's like. It's so odd, but TV magic's very odd. There's just same with acting on film. There's, you know, the big difference is essentially there is no viewer, really. You're just doing it. Yeah. So it's an odd experience.
Yeah, it's like what we really do as magicians, just like as teenagers and as kids when we're learning it. It's just us in the room playing to our, you know, just to like one camera, just to the mirror, or whatever way you're practicing, or someone fortunate sibling who has to watch you maybe as well.
I used to do pickpocketing on my mum. I got the Pierre Jax's book from Magic Books by Post, which was sort of really badly translated from French. And I used to make her wear my dad's suit jacket. And as she was making the evening meal, I had to pick her pocket.
That's an interesting, trying to cook the dinner. You don't want to do it at the wrong time, nudge her and everything was flying.
And also, it was always so obvious, because why would you walk up to her while she's cooking a meal?
Yeah.
Like, just like... anyway, I tried my best. Yeah.
Like, I forgot. What are you cooking again? Oh, lean in. Oh, yeah.
Hold this for a moment.
That's a nice watch you've got on you. Oh, yeah. You should take that off, really.
So you mentioned TV and working on TV. I think the first time I started seeing some of your stuff was The Secret World of Magic and that whole show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Secret World of Magic was the best series I ever got to do. For two reasons. One was it was actually mine and Pete's idea. And normally with TV, TV's a lot more like, one thing people don't realize, that TV's a lot more like a play. A play's written by someone else. They then hire the actor they think suits that part. And that's a thing a lot of people don't really understand about, certainly modern TV magic anyway. A lot of the shows I did for Objective, Andrew O'Connor, who was a very famous TV producer, he'd invented these formats himself. And then you had to perform it in a way he wanted it, in a style he wanted. But what happened was, we pitched the idea for Secret World of Magic and he went nowhere. And then one day, so the story goes, he had a last-minute meeting with Sky, found out that the guy at Sky was a fan of magic. And I think they'd mentioned a few ideas hadn't really flown, and I think they just threw it in. Oh, well, Ali and Pete had this magic travel show idea, and then we ended up doing it. And that's what's always amazing with all these things. It's amazing how much luck is actually involved. You always feel as though there's some sort of steady career path, but there's none whatsoever. You know, someone mentions an idea in a meeting, and usually it's always a no, and then once in a blue moon, someone says yes, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. When you traveling out, what was your favorite place to travel, or who was your favorite person to meet, or?
That's a great question. Well, my hero was Tamariz, Juan Tamariz.
Yeah.
So meeting Tamariz was I was a little bit in awe of him. I'd seen him performing in Blackpool when I was about 17, and he was the first person who completely fooled me. You know, like where you can't even comprehend what he's doing. And it was that trick he used to do. I don't know if you've ever seen Tamariz do this trick where he gets someone to take a card, put it in a box. He gets someone else from the audience to open the box and then take out the card, and they know it. I don't know if you've ever seen Tamariz do that. He used to lecture it, and it's a miracle. And I won't tell you a secret because it's so clever. But you should watch him do it. I just always remember watching that and not having even the faintest idea how he did it. And then years later, we got to meet him, Secret World of Magic. So he was like my ultimate hero. But then I enjoyed obviously meeting everyone. And then I think one of the other real surprises was one of Pete's heroes was David Acker. And at the time, I didn't know anything about David Acker, but I think he was probably our best guest. And in the sense of, because he was also a stand-up, like he just kept coming up with great ideas. And on the spot, he just kept improvising loads and loads and loads of stuff. And so I think that was just a little extra something. Yeah.
I think it's really good as well, where like for young magicians who are starting out to actually watch that show and to feel that there is a secret world of magic. It is bigger than your local magic club if you haven't been to one of the big conventions that are going on or anything like that. Because I even found for myself, it really like opened my eyes to the world of magic that exists out there.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, I when I first got into magic, there wasn't the internet. I mean, I'm genuinely sounding old now. And the only thing I had was in the back of Peter Eldin's pocketbook of magic, there was a few addresses of magic shops. There was Davenport's, International, and Magic Books by Post, and that was my only contact with magic. I found out there was a magic club in Harrogate, and then I joined there, and they were really great, the members there. And then they're the ones who told me about Blackpool, and then I went to Blackpool with them. Yeah, but it is there's a huge. I mean, it's different now with Facebook and. Yeah. I feel as though my Facebook page, I've got like 3 family members and about 4,000 magicians.
That always happens. But that one Tamariz trick he did on the show as well, it still fries me. I'm always surprised when all the hearts show up from the show.
Yeah, if you watch that clip carefully, he's misdirecting the cameraman as well. Yeah. And he did it in one take as well. And no one ever got the full story on that one. Yeah.
It was an incredible thing. We have a question actually got sent in. It was based off something that you were saying earlier about going on tour. I just remember that I got Chris, who we're talking to before, sending a message asking, do you have any advice for selling tickets for your first tour?
It's a total nightmare. Like there's no two ways about it. I thought that doing a tour is like, here you go, your chance to do your one-man show. You can really obsess over it and get it all right. You do all of that. That's like 1/10 of it. You spend 9/10 of the time selling tickets, and that's even when you have promoters, and that's even when you've got good promoters. The truth of it is there's no real magic answer. The only thing I could sort of, my experience is you really are at the mercy of theatres. Now, some theatres you go to, they're really well run, and other ones, unfortunately, are really badly run. And when you do a tour, what will always happen, most of them will be okay to great, but there's going to be a few that are just really bad.
Yeah.
And there doesn't really, and I've seen everyone, like, because I'm with one of the comedy agents, and I've seen everyone in little theaters and big theaters. It's this real thing in the comedy world. You sort of get more used to it. I remember I just finished Impossible, and it was 700 seats a night. And the next night I was in a little art centre to about 50 people, and none of them spoke English. And you just sort of get used to that, really. But if you're going to do a tour, I think you have to accept that's probably the reality. And I would say that even if you've just come off of that normally the best time to do a tour is if you've just done some sort of TV. But I've done tours with people after they've done BGT and it made no difference. I've done it with people who did BGT and it did make a difference. Or they've done TV shows like myself and it's helped and it hasn't helped. I would say Secret World of Magic really helped me and Pete get an audience. But I think it helped because it was repeated so often as well. And I think that happened a lot for Derren. There was a time where More 4 just always had Derren on late at night. And I got a feeling that sort of Derren got a lot of sort of post-pub students watching him, and there was like 2 or 3 years. And I think you need a bit of that. And without that, it's tricky. Doing a tour is very tricky, and there's no rush to do a tour. Nowadays everyone wants to do a tour, but I was doing magic for 20 years before I did a tour. So to me, there's no. I think everyone sort of thinks, "Oh, I'll put a show together and I'll go on tour." Well, it takes a long time to get a profile, really.
Definitely. So something I found, even just doing shows locally, I found a venue where you could have 100 people sitting in there in like pub seats, or if a hint that it's a quiet night, you can make that place look full with 20 people by removing all the chairs and rearranging the tables and that sort of stuff, so it always looks better for people.
I mean, that's again down to the actual the venue themselves and how organized they are. When you're rammed, you want tight theatre seating. When you're quiet, you want to make it look like a pub with cabaret seating, and you want to have reserve signs all at the back to encourage everyone to sit at the front. You definitely do want to do that. There's nothing worse than a hollow room, and also there's, I was in Las Vegas. I can actually say it now. I'm going to be on Penn And Teller Foolers again in a couple of weeks. I'm allowed to say it now, but I was there in just before COVID in the off season in Vegas, which was interesting because everyone's quiet. I mean, I was at Cirque du Soleil and there must have been 200 in a 1,500 seater. So and when you see stuff like that, you just realize that's how it is. I saw Copperfield, I saw everyone, and they all had pretty good audiences, but definitely not the busy season. And that's the reality of doing shows. It takes a long time to learn that, though, but some nights you'll especially if you've got like a regular night, you'll go there some nights, and for some reason you don't understand, you've sold 100 tickets, say, and then the next time you go, you've sold 7, and you can't understand what did you do differently. You probably just didn't do anything differently. It's just a bit like that, I do. There's quite no rhyme or reason to it.
I always think of the experiment that they did before with the pigeons, where they'd release food at a random interval, and the pigeons would like alter their behavior, thinking their behavior was triggering the food being released because it was so random. And I felt that like with ticket sales, you spend so much time analyzing, my poster had this color in it, I did this differently, and it drives stuff crazy.
It's all bollocks, really. I mean, you get more of an audience over time. I mean, I remember the thing that really hit home for me. I was in Edinburgh, and Balls of Steel. I don't know if you ever saw that show on Channel 4. It was like a prank show, and Mark Dolan was the host. He's a very, very charming sort of Louis Theroux type guy, and he was doing a stand-up show before me. And Balls of Steel was on, and he just couldn't get an audience. And then I was on after him, and I was full. And I hadn't done telly for about a year or so. And that's the day I realized, I was like, it's nothing to do with telly. It's really because I've been in this same room in Edinburgh before. You know, and I've got a bit of a following up here just because I've been here. Yeah. And one thing you don't realize, like with a lot of stand-ups, they do comedy clubs in some of these theatres, and then they start doing one-man shows in these same theatres, and they just do a lot more gigs than magicians. They really do. Like they just do gig after gig after gig, and then they build up a following. So I do think that the weirdest thing about magic is I think magicians are obsessed with marketing. And in any other art form that I've experienced, everyone else is just working on their act. But it's this weird thing with magicians where I've not met a magician who's not an international award-winning sellout star. Not yet.
Well, and yet, I haven't won anything.
There isn't one at all. Probably Derren.
Me and Dave haven't won anything.
That's my new tagline. The only non-international award-winning magician.
I've won fuck all.
Well, the best one I did is I won the IBM years ago. That was the first big award I won. I was quite young when I won it. But when I was doing corporate shows, I used to put IBM Close-Up Champion. And they would all think it was sponsored by IBM.
Nice.
Brilliant.
I think the reason magicians love marketing is we need the money to be able to glue all our 50s onto like extreme burn gimmicks and destroy all of our money on gimmicks.
I think that's another thing people don't realize about doing a tour is the cost of a magician touring is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Even if you do quite a minimal show, you're probably gonna need a van, a stage manager, and all your props. You know, the minute you do more than an hour, even if you're a bit of a close-up guy, the costs of doing a magic show are pretty high. You know, but I think the main thing is there's no rush. I think you should always be working up towards getting a show together, but there's. A tour, the reality of a tour is driving home at 3 a.m. with a ginsters, even though you might have just smashed it, but you were in Exeter, and Exeter is 5 hours away from London. So that's the grim reality of it.
So I even went to see, this was a few years ago now, maybe like 6 years ago, Andrew Maxwell was performing in the Cork Opera House. And he was been on the TV the whole time. It's about 1,000-seater. There was 30 people in the audience. I was one of them. We didn't fill the front 2 rows. He had to send home his opening act and everything. It was just, I don't know what happened that night. It was some night in January, I think.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what happened. Bad promotion. I've done the same, and it's quite embarrassing because especially when it's like a proper tour night. But there's a very well posted magician friend of mine he tried to do like a small intimate show in London, and it didn't quite kick in. But he didn't quite kick in because the guy promoting it had never really been a promoter before. And there's a real magic in finding a good promoter. There really is. There's not many around really. And also you don't realize that the money that might have been spent, the other way of doing it is you can really sell out a show, but you could have spent a fortune selling it out. And so what the stand-ups do, they try to spend the least amount of money, and they really do rely on the theatres. So in that case, I would imagine that theatre probably just didn't do the promo they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
That I've had that happen tons of times. Yeah. And it's a shame, Andrew Maxwell's a phenomenal comedian.
It was a great show because he just made jokes about how empty it was. He just didn't even use the microphone for most of the show.
That's what I love, is that you know, and that you learning to play an empty room is another art in itself.
Yeah.
I remember as a comedian said to me that because I do comedy on the because I do magic on the comedy circuit, I often get shoved in the middle. And in a comedy club, by far, or in any show, the sweetest spot's always the middle, because they've been nicely warmed up by someone else, and you don't have the pressure of closing. And this, it's Marlon Davis. Marlon Davis, the comedian from East London. He was telling me, he says, start opening. He says, learn to open. You know, learn to warm them up, and learn to not get the response you usually get, but because that's how you get those real pros. Because what Andrew Maxwell will do, next year he'll be there again, and he'll be there again, and he'll be there again, and they sort of don't care. They're absolutely bulletproof performers. It's amazing to watch.
Definitely. I think working with comedians, because I go to the local comedy circuit a bit in my area before lockdown, and seeing how they work, and like I was going there with my wife, and after a couple of months, like, we're able to say the words with the comedians as they're saying it, because that's, if they have a good 2 minutes, they're happy, while magicians want to have, it's more about how long they can go rather than.
Yeah, I mean, as a friend of mine, he's a very good card magician. He started doing a one-man show, and he goes, yeah, I put together 40 minutes. I was like, what? 40 minutes? Like, you haven't put together 40 minutes, you know. It's true. A comedian, after they used to say with stand-up, the first 4 years you're putting together your good 20 minutes show. The first 4 years. Now, it's not always like, it depends how good you are at writing, because the hard thing with stand-up, you've got to figure it out. In magic, we have tons of books teaching us how to do it. Comedy, there's like hardly any at all. But it's true that after 2 or 3 months, a comedian would be very happy with like a new 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. And they come up with their own stuff. Well, again, in magic, there's he says it this way on the DVD, so I will say it this way on stage, rather than having to be original thinking. And I think being around that mindset really helps you be more creative than hanging out exclusively with just magicians.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with magic is magic is a little bit like gymnastics or juggling. There are classic moves, classic tricks, classic routines. And I think it's okay. It's okay to actually invent a brand new magic trick from scratch would take so long that it would be very hard to put a whole show together like that. All you can do really is try and add a new something to it. That's, you know, when you watch a great juggler, he's still juggling 4 balls, but he might have a new pattern or a different type of music no one's used before, or something to make it different. But it's kind of true. The downside of magic is what kind of happens in magic. There's a lot of fear. Like, a really good example of this is seeing what tricks are popular in different countries. So I've just learned oil and water from. I'm friends with Darwin Ortiz, and he taught me it, and I just put it on my Instagram. And it's really funny that oil and water, sort of in Britain, like everyone's a bit like, oh, oil and water, and then Darwin goes, yeah, but in Spain, everyone does oil and water at every week. And then it's really weird, and that's because Tamariz believed in it so much. Whereas here, you'd probably say in the last 10 years or so, it was probably Omnideck. You know, Omnideck's been around. It's in Danny Carem's book in the late 80s. No one did it. And then one day someone got it in London or somewhere, and everyone else saw the reaction, and then everyone starts copying it. And so sort of magic goes in these weird sort of fashions, really. But an easy way to stand out is to just go and pick a popular trick from the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. Because the trick will still be good. It's just everyone's forgotten about it.
And it becomes a new trick then, or a new concept.
Yeah, it becomes a new thing. Yeah, you know. I mean, there's a million DVDs where they go, I've come up with this move. And I'm like, you can pretty much open any Marlowe book and that moves in there.
Yeah.
But because everyone's got that Marlowe book and hasn't got past chapter 2, really, then it's new. I mean, that happens all the time. Yeah.
Magicians have bookshelves full of like first chapters after being read and nothing after that, but they want the collection.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm actually forcing myself to get out of that. I'm actually forcing myself to. It's very hard to read a magic book cover to cover. It's very, and I always remember. I got David Roth's lecture from International Magic when I was about 19, and I actually learned every trick on that video. And then I was like, people thought I was like a coin man, and I was actually, I've actually got my money's worth out of one tape. Yeah. And if we all actually did that, if you actually went, for this next year, I'm actually going to learn 9 tricks from Card College, you would already be in the top 1% of magicians, but the trap is we all go to the magic shop, buy 50 things every week, come out, look at it, and then shove it, just shove it away.
the bottom magic drawer that every magician has, and then the bottom drawer becomes boxes, and the boxes becomes storage units, and the storage units become a warehouse.
I have literally got a storage unit. Yeah, I mean, I literally have, and it's embarrassing. Yeah. I've got all these illusions in there that I've never used, and I'm just like, what was I thinking?
Illusions are another different price bracket.
But it's just that same weirdo obsession. You see, once you've worked your way through, I've been through all the magic shops and all the DVDs, and then what's left? Well, you got to start getting some illusions.
I got.
It's literally like a drug. I need bigger. I need something bigger, stronger.
I bought the Inception gimmick right before lockdown, and now I can't touch anybody. So that's great. so that was a good investment, definitely.
But you're right, like we were saying earlier, like less is more with stuff like that. Like when people are like your question about performing and doing tours, like you can put so much in, but if you keep it kind of simple, like your example of the chop cup and things like that, it's a timeless classic, so people can get it. It's easy to understand. I remember when I first learned, even like the ambitious card from Darrell, and like I remember like learning all the phases, and I thought the trick was all the phases, and you're 30 phases in, and people are just like, what's going on? So as like a teenager or whatever. So definitely like stripping back and kind of less is more is even bigger, is even better sometimes than the big illusions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. I'm one of the few people to have ventured into illusions, because the unfortunate problem with an illusion is you got to transport it. You've got to hire dancers, you've got to train dancers, and then you have to have a stage manager. So your costs are through the roof. The first thing to develop is Jeff McBride has a brilliant lecture DVD he did years ago, where he did what he called his commando act. And it was the first time I'd heard that expression. But really, as a magician, you want to spend all your time working on your commando act, really. And what a commando act is, some of the viewers who haven't seen Jeff McBride, it really is, you can do this anytime, any place, anywhere. The props are fairly small to carry, and you could probably do this for about 5 people, and you could probably do it for about 200 people. And that really is your classic stand-up act that could even be a close-up act. And really, as a magician, that you want to spend your time developing that act, because that's what you'll be doing 99% of the time. Yeah, and that's not to say you do need different stuff for different things. If you're doing telly, you do want to do something a bit different. But definitely for the core act, it's definitely that, and certainly for touring, yeah. The first time I did a tour, I got the shock of my life. If you ring up a stage manager, and their fees are like your fees, for doing a show. And then you're like, oh, I didn't think of that.
So prices go up.
So you need to spend time just getting that core rat so that you can do anywhere, really. Yeah.
Based off that, we had another question that came in, which is Evan sent it in earlier, that you work with a lot of assistants in the illusions, and how do you advertise that? Because I see it'd be kind of weird posting, looking for a woman I can put in a box or something.
Are you looking for an assistant or looking for a girlfriend, Evan? That's the question.
Like, Evan's probably like just does card tricks, but he's like, I need an assistant. Yes, I want the box.
You know what? A good magician's assistant is a nightmare. I have an assistant now called Petra, and she is a professional dancer, and she's an excellent dancer, and she's also in this big dance company. And really, what you've got to remember that a magician's assistant, you need a dancer. Because they have to be fit, flexible, athletic, and magicians' boxes are tiny. You know, there was always this thing which was, why does a magician always put the woman in the box? Well, the real reason is those boxes are tiny. If those boxes were designed for a 6-foot man to get in, Christ, it would be huge. You know, and the best way to do it is. Firstly, family and friends. I know that sounds so obvious. And then secondly, what I did is I put adverts in a local dance school. That was my way around it. And you know, every town's got a local dance school. But it suddenly becomes a very different ball game because you have to manage someone else, and they aren't into your show. You know, this is a gig. This is a gig for them. So that I've had all sorts of dancers, and they are, you know, for a dancer, a magic show is good filler. That's what it is. So you have to realize that that's what it is. It's a bit like us doing your mate's wedding. You know, you'll do it. It's not what you want to do, but you'll do it. And you just have to realize that that's what they're doing. So it takes quite a lot of management. And I've really learned the hard way. And also one of the huge problems working with assistants is they really have to do awful things. Getting inside a magic box, which is tiny, it's very uncomfortable. They get cut very easily. And so you're asking a lot of them. And so you have to really bear that in mind and try and be as accommodating as you can. And it's not easy. Yeah.
Good question. Good advice. And you were saying that you're going back on Penn and Teller Fool Us. I think when you first heard about it the first time going on, it was like the first season, first time out. What was your original thinking of it? And was there any question that you wouldn't do it, or what was your decision on that?
I was absolutely shitting myself when I did Fool Us. It was what happened. It was a very strange. I was the very first magician to ever appear on Fool Us. When we filmed it, I was the second ever magician. Michael Vincent was the first, but then they altered the order around. Originally, what happened with me is I think I was one of the very first people they met, and I think I wasn't that into it. If I'm going back off memory now, I had an acting agent at the time. I didn't really have a magic agent. And an acting agent said to me, she goes, "Oh, it looks like some sort of reality show. Don't do it." That's what she said. She said, "Just don't do it." And then The Magicians was on BBC One, which had Barry Stewart on and Pete Furman and Chris Corn. And I think I was up for the Chris Corn role at one point. Everyone had seen me performing on that, and I didn't get it. And then in the end, I was quite disappointed I didn't get that. And then I ended up. And then Noel Qualter, I think, was in the running, and they said, "Have you seen Ali Cook?" And then they suddenly brought me back quite at the last minute, and I went on the show. Yeah, but very weird. But that also explains you just what it's like, you know. But the original instructions were Penn and Teller try and guess how you do it. They can examine the props. and we were all really nervous. But when I saw how charming and how respectful they were to Michael Vincent, I was peering through the curtain, and then all of a sudden I lost my nerves and I felt okay. Because then I realized that what this show really was, it's really just a magic show. And the whole framing of can you fool them or not, all of that is just because the original commissioners at ITV, they felt like with X Factor and shows like that it need to feel like a competition. What it is, it's just a magic variety show. That's what it is. And then when you realize that's what it's like, then it's cool. And then you just go and do it.
I heard Penn say that it's one of the reasons they like the competition aspect as well is it guarantees to the audience that there's nobody in on it. It's not a camera trick that's going on, that it's because it's competition, it has to actually be legitimate trick that you have to do on stage. Yeah,
it's interesting that they're very smart guys, Penn and Teller, that they've actually invented a format where the format forces originality.
Yeah.
Now, when you actually think about what that format's doing, because really, you know that this is a paradox of magic. Earlier, I was saying you should spend all your time getting your commando act ready, but when you go on Penn and Teller Foolish, you can't do your commando acts. You have to do something new, either in presentation or method, and the whole competition aspect is that they're really looking for something unusual. I mean, this item I'm doing now on this one, I can't tell you anything about it. It's nuts. And when I first thought of it, I was like, yeah, I'll do it on Penn and Teller Foolish. I'll send it off. Because I know they want something a bit nuts. That's what they're after. Is they're after something a little bit bizarre. And when you watch the show, you know, there's always like some. I saw a guy producing a cup of tea from some sort of clever box. I thought it was brilliant, you know. And then also, because of the competition aspect, you can't be using any pre-show as well.
Yeah.
Which we know is a miracle. Any pre-show is a miracle. So they're sort of, I think they're doing a service to magic. They're forcing us to be original. It's a great idea.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
the trick you did with the chicken and the duck, if people haven't seen it, swapping the heads over, was that always the trick you were thinking of doing, and how did that? No. How did you think of it?
No, I was. That's an very old routine of Surveyor Leroy's. Well, he goes much beyond the history of that trick is excellent. In Hoffman's autobiography. So sort of 1800s, he saw a street magician in Paris performing this trick. So in the original version, they used doves, and they would dye one dove black and one dove white, and they swapped the heads over. And the method was they actually ripped the heads off. And then what
a super glue.
Yeah. Well, they literally pull the heads off. And then when they put it in the box, they switched it for one that's alive. I mean, I pitched that obviously to Penn and Teller. They weren't up for it, but that was the original. And the bit of banter this street performer used to do is he would go to a woman in the front row. He would pull the head off a dove. He would hold his thumb over the main artery. And he goes, would you like this with blood or without blood? And they would always go, oh, without blood. And then he would let go of his thumb and a bit would spurt out and land on their dress. Absolutely. That's absolutely what he used to do. But anyway, that's the...
That would fool Penn and Teller, though. If you had done it with that method, they would have been fooled 100%.
So definitely fooled.
And then the idea of doing it with the chicken and the duck was Surveyor Leroy's. And then that to make it a comedy routine. And then the modern method, which I can't really talk about because all the rights involved, but the modern method is effectively was made popular by a magician called Willard the Wizard, who Willard the Wizard, if you've not seen him, the Wizard of Oz was based on him. So he literally looks like the Wizard of Oz. So what was happening is I was in Edinburgh, desperate to try and do something no one had done for a long, long time. And I was doing the chicken and the duck. I was doing the chicken and the duck live. And then I think Noel mentioned it to them. And the problem they had in that show was they wanted to do a stage trick that felt skillful. And that's why they asked me to do it, because it bridged that gap between sort of stage and parlor, because there's a bit of handling, but then there's also a bit of props and a bit of glamour with the girls and things as well. So that's how sort of how it came about. But the real star of that trick is my assistant Charlotte, who is a comedy actress, who, she's doing all the expressions, and really, for me, she's the one who really lifted that performance. And she hadn't done that before. She did it on the night, and we really interacted with each other, and it really worked well. Yeah,
brilliant.
It was definitely one of the most memorable Fool Us performances, and to see how much that show has gone since then, that pretty much every big name magician now has been on it in one way or another. And definitely looking forward to seeing you back on it. And if the fact that it was done in February, there might be a Fool Us trophy slightly off camera that you're not allowed to show us or something like that. But we'll leave that for guessing for now. So we have a segment on the show which we call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is basically we ask someone to describe a performance that they did which went pretty bad or / ugly, or just an absolute disaster of a show. So far we've had someone vomiting on stage, we've had poisoning, we've had Michael Maher almost getting arrested. So no pressure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, good. His eyes, his bloodshot eyes.
Oh yeah. Jonathan Goodwin was talking about how he was wearing goggles and his nose was plugged and his eyes started popping out of his head. So that was nice as well.
Okay, so the first two are quite easy, because this is a story I quite often tell, and it might be worth telling this for young magicians who might be watching as well. So it was the first night of an Edinburgh show where I performed the water tank trick that I've done on sort of TV now, and it's the very first. I'd rehearsed it a lot. Very first time I ever performed it. It was an audience of about 80 people in a small room in Edinburgh. We crammed this water tank into a tiny room, and I got a standing ovation, like a real standing. I never experienced that in my life, and these are like sort of students in Edinburgh stood up at the end of the water tank. That was like one of the most amazing things I've ever done. And then I was high as a kite, and then the next day I do the same show in the same room, obviously a different audience, but this just shows you what it's like doing shows. I died on my ass for an hour, and with literally no reaction whatsoever. I was sat kneeling in a water tank with my arms cuffed, my neck chained, and I just looked at the audience and I thought, is this not enough? It's not enough to get some sort of reaction. I did a water tank escape, and it was still like, yeah. All right. What? And the program's out. What's the next one? So that's an example of the good and the bad, and it just shows you that's what it's like doing shows. The magicians were all sort of lusting after this brilliant reaction, but some nights, and the show all went really smoothly. It all went really smoothly. But then in terms of ugly, oh my God.
I think that audience was pretty ugly though. When you're like, the bad audience isn't a heckling audience. A bad audience is the indifferent audience. Yeah, the ones who just aren't bothered, because the heckler's bothered, So in terms of a really ugly, we were filming in Monkey Magic
which is a long time ago now, we had this idea called Nothing Up Our Sleeves, where you had to perform magic naked. So we had to shave our bits, and then they literally stuck on like some sort of cod piece. And then we had to go to a nudist camp and start filming tricks naked, basically. And then one of the things that the director did, he just went, "Oh, Ali, you left your T-shirt or something over there." I went, "Oh," he goes, "I need it now." And I turned around and I ran naked across a field. And then I turned back around, and everyone was falling over, laughing the face off. And he'd filmed my arse as I was running. I'm pretty sure he put it in one of the episodes.
If people want to search for that on YouTube, they might.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be like Naked Magician somewhere. It'll be somewhere.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. When you're on, it's nervous enough being on stage or just standing up in front of people, trying to fool them, let alone naked. I don't think.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing about that was it was all it was a bit like doing, what we were talking about Zoom shows. When you're doing TV magic, it's just you and a camera and you're doing that. And I did Fickle Nickel, naked, because it's one of those, it's such a great trick, you can do it. But it was just what happened with that show. It was a little bit like Jackass. Jackass was a huge hit at that time.
Yeah.
So they were trying to copy the sort of things they do in Jackass, basically. And that was the
would a Motley Twist kind of a thing, or
Yeah,
cool.
Because I definitely think like the Monkey Magic was one of those quite different magic shows from what they're used to when it was coming up, because there was the whole David Copperfield specials and that sort of stuff, and then it was like the Blaine or Derren-y type stuff, and then this coming in with the Jackass style. I think it's the whole thing of going whatever way magic's going the other way to stand out. And even though it was more like the Jackass route, it still, from a magic point of view, looks very different. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was like there was Trigger Happy TV, and then there was Jackass. And if you actually analyze Monkey Magic, that's what it is. It's hidden camera pranks. Hidden camera magic shows have now become quite a regular thing.
Yeah.
But back then it hadn't been done, and but that's what it was. It was really mixing those two things together. And one of the best strands we had was Magicians at War, where each week we were given like magic with fire, and then it'd be two magicians had to come up with the best trick with fire. And I still thought that was such a great idea. But this was really sort of Andrew O'Connor's mastermind. He was a very good TV producer, and he was very savvy. And at the end of the day, he got us on telly. And you have to realize that, as magicians, we might love a certain style or a certain performer, but that's not going to get on telly. When things like Jackass on telly, they're not going to have Copperfield on telly, because what Copperfield did, if you watch Copperfield, he had things like Phil Collins and Seal, and the lighting was like electric blues.
Yeah.
It was like late 80s, early 90s, and it was drenched in the sort of the culture of that time. And so Monkey Magic was drenched in its culture of that time as well. That's not to say these things don't come back, but yeah, that was definitely what it was. Yeah. And
just like passion.
And also you've got to realize what market it's for, So Monkey Magic was skateboarders, that was really the people who'd watch it.
Definitely. For the now that you have transitioned doing a lot of the illusion stuff, do you still do the close-up gigs, or is it just something you do now more as a hobby type thing?
I love. I'm an obsessive learner of magic. I learn stuff all the time. I kind of just enjoy it, sort of coins and cards. But in terms of gigs, the conclusion I came to was that it's all about the writing. It's always about what makes a good trick is either visually it's just amazing to watch, or it's how you framed it. And so I got really into writing. So I would say that I perform mostly on the stand-up circuit, and what I enjoy is actually the writing aspect of it. And so if a corporate close-up gig comes along, I won't say no.
Yeah.
But really, my core show is comedy clubs now, and has been for 10 years or so. Yeah, I think to a lot of magicians, I'm seen as a close-up guy, but that is mostly what I do. And I guess that was just a natural progression. I'd done close-up for 12 years or so. I started very young doing close-up, so for me to move into comedy clubs was just like a new challenge, really.
Yeah.
I think the comedy club's a great idea. I really like doing comedy clubs. And have you tried performing just pure stand-up, or do you always keep the magic in?
No, I would say I do less and less magic now. But a lot of that really comes down to not wanting to carry the stuff around.
I heard that like illusionists are jealous of mentalists because they carry less, and then mentalists are jealous of comedians because they just show up.
Yeah, I mean, it's punishing how much when you how much money stand-up comedians can make, because they literally don't need anything. But I enjoy stand-up because of you learn who you are. You learn who you are more. Mm-hmm. When you were on about everyone copying a magician from a magic DVD. Yeah. When you do stand-up, well, obviously you can only write your own material about you, and you really find out a lot about yourself. And I enjoy that. I kind of enjoy that process. The hardest thing in stand-up, though, is as magicians, we really want to kill it. And we don't realize what a miracle most tricks are. So with stand-up, you have to realize that, even if you're just getting gentle chuckles, that's okay. You can keep them bubbling away, and then hit them with a big laugh, and then keep them bubbling away, hit them with a big laugh, tell a story. Whereas magicians, we feel as though we have to absolutely smash it every time. And I think that's a hard skill to learn. That's a really hard skill to learn.
Yeah, we are really just people looking for gratitude or like approval constantly. So it's like, oh, I didn't get a standing ovation 3 times in my show tonight. It must have been awful, because even just trying to force standing ovations.
I mean, the ultimate is an illusionist, because an illusionist wants a round of applause for just shoving a pole in a box. They just shove a pole in a box, and then they're like, come on. And it's like, you just shoved a pole in a box. What? Nothing amazing about that.
I'll be a comedian trying to work for a long time to get a chuckle, and then the illusionist just puts a pole in and they erupt.
Yeah. But I mean, but also an audience senses. There's something inherently hard about making people laugh. I'm not saying it's not easy being a magician either, but the hardest thing with being a magician is connection. Yeah. The heart, the biggest tragedy of magic is that that we often get remembered for the stunt and not for us. Yeah. And Paul Daniels is probably the big example of the one where they remembered him. They really did. But everyone, that's the danger of having a trick that's brilliant. Yeah. It sounds. We're always after these amazing tricks, but then you'll just be, oh my God, he's the guy who produced. He ate the snake. He's the guy who ate the snake. That, and really, you want them to remember you, which is of course the huge thing about being a stand-up.
I think the Omnideck's is a great example of that. I always have people come up to me being like, "Oh, I saw this magician. He turned the cards into a block of glass," and I'm like, oh yeah, that could be any magician in the country, but
yeah,
because I definitely think trying to be remembered is important. And then with the comedy magic side of things, I think I heard someone say before that a lot of comedy magic isn't that magical and it's not funny. So it's a difficult line to go with.
It is a really hard line to go with. Yeah. Most comedy magicians are stolen jokes that are old, and they do old comedy routines. They are. And if you go to somewhere like Edinburgh, where they review comedy like they review theatre, you ain't fooling anyone. If you're excellent at it, you'll get 3 stars. And the review will be a great homage to old school entertainment. It's a huge to try and push into the 4s and 5 stars with the legit comedy reviewers. You have to start writing your own material, and it depends. There's no right way to do it, but the biggest trap is if you're relying on a head guillotine for laughs, then that scenario is so extreme. Most people can get laughs out of it, and so a comedy reviewer will know that. And they'll say, "Oh, brilliantly executed, old school fun." They will say that, yeah. Very different if you could get those same sort of laughs, and you're just doing oil and water. But very different ball game.
Yeah. More challenging for sure.
Pardon?
It's more challenging for sure. To do something left the field.
It's weird. People, I think people realize if you pull something off that's harder. I think they realize, bizarrely, yeah. We just lost Dave, have we?
Maybe. No,
I'm still here. It's just I'm keeping an eye on there's some messages coming in, so I'm just keeping an eye on them.
Okay, cool, yeah.
One person just asked there, I was just gonna, do you have any advice for getting into Edinburgh, into the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, like trying to get a venue or something like that?
Again, like, I don't know who's asking. Don't go until you're ready.
Yeah.
Like, Edinburgh's like entering BGT every night for 30 nights.
Yeah.
And it's you want to, most stand-ups will go to Edinburgh when they've been on the circuit for 5 years as a professional comedian. Again, there's this sort of huge thing with magic. It's a bit like, oh right, I've got a show together now. I'm off to Edinburgh, And so when you're at the point that a promoter says to you, "Hey, why do you come to Edinburgh?" That's probably when you should go to Edinburgh. Probably, yeah.
And make sure it's a good promoter, not someone who's not going to sell tickets.
Well, I can tell you they're all terrible in a way, and they're all kind of brilliant in a way. Selling tickets in Edinburgh is hard work. Yeah, it's really hard work. Yeah, there's no two ways about it.
Comedian in Ireland that I've done some work with, Joe Rooney, and he was in Father Ted and things like that, and he was saying that as well. It's hard to get the people in and then to keep them consistently enjoying the different shows and everything else.
It is. Yeah, it's. I mean, I would say in recent times, it's probably Pete who invented magicians going to Edinburgh. Pete did it, and then I did it, and then Baron Stewart did it. And then with us guys doing it, then Chris Cox was doing it actually. That's when it started to become a bit of a thing. But it's there's no rush. I mean, I haven't done Edinburgh for a few years, and I always think I'll go back to Edinburgh when I feel as though I've got something, There's two ways to look at it. You either go there to get a show together, but I would do it very much under the radar, or you go there as a proper showcase where you really want to be. I know the boy with tape on his face. He didn't go to Edinburgh until he'd been doing that show for 5 years or so. Well, he really went in and he smashed it because he's been doing it for so long. But then once you feel you've got a show, you just write. You write to the venues and then you write to the different promoters. But but you can be lucky and you can be unlucky.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Yeah. It's never straightforward. The first year I went with a very big promoter, and then they made one of the biggest promoters, and they made a huge mistake with my posters, and none of my posters were up. I mean, and then you would have thought, hang on, huge promoter, they would know what they're doing, and it was a complete mistake that anyone could have made. But it just goes to show you, I thought I was all home and dry, and I wasn't. I had this huge issue, and then we had to get new posters done, and and so we didn't even have posters up until about the first week had finished. It was a nightmare. But really, you can, there's a Fringe website. You just apply on there.
Yeah.
But I would say don't do Edinburgh until you think you're ready, because if you go up there and have a bad one, I think you'll never do it again.
Yeah.
So I think it's better to get used to it, and then and get your show and take your time.
Because I think a lot of people see Edinburgh as it's a good place to like break out, but really it's a place to get to. You need to build up to it. It's not like a starting point. Once I get there, my career will change. Because to be honest as well, even if you do a great show, you'll probably be back to it again.
I think traditionally Edinburgh was a great place to spot sketch actors. And it took me a long time to realize this myself, that a lot of sketch actors came out of Edinburgh, and I still think that's really what it's designed for. Then it sort of became for stand-ups, but now you can smash it in Edinburgh, and it's so sort of vast now. It doesn't really necessarily guarantee anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Not so much. It does for comedy and a bit for theatre. If you go up there for theatre, an agent might see you. If you go there for comedy, you might get one of the comedy agents. But for magic, there's still not enough of an infrastructure for magic.
Yeah.
Really. Someone might see you, but it's a bit more random, really.
As you've said previously, like you've had a comedy agent and you've had like and more of an acting agent, but to find a magic agent, I think, is nigh on impossible, really.
I think the only one that exists is the one who looks after Dynamo, which is Dan, and they're just friends, and he became his manager agent. But other than that, there's not really an agency really for magicians. There's certain people who use magicians, sort of corporate things like that, but they're not so much, not really. No, you would normally be hopping onto like a presenter agent or not really an acting agent. Not really. It's a different kind of fish.
Teas and stuff like that, and presenters.
I would, like either corporate events company or possibly a presenter agent. Yeah.
Even on event management websites and things like that, I always see the magicians listed next to the singing waiters or those sort of things, rather than you're like, my art that I've been dedicating my life to is just saying additional is like the category heading.
Yeah. But I mean, it is a bit like that. But one of the downsides is magicians do get paid well. In contrast to a lot of other, I work with dancers, and from the illusion side of things, I work with stand-ups. Magicians' rates are insane compared to other art forms. So we do often do grotty gigs, but we do generally get paid pretty well for grotty gigs. Yeah.
Don't tell them. We can't let them know. If any booking agents watching, that's not true. We don't get paid enough. We need to up the prices. But we've gone over the hour now, so we just like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and for the people who are sending in questions and stuff. We really appreciate it. And do you have anything you'd like to promote or anything like that before we go?
Well, if you're into magic, you can follow my Instagram, which is @Ali_cook, and I'm going to be on Foolers soon, so keep an eye out for that. But not really promoting a tour. Can't say there's many of them on at the moment.
Yeah, I was watching a clip earlier of you when I was doing a bit of research, and you were saying, I have a tour in autumn 2020, and I was like,
not anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe 2026, yeah,
definitely, when we can all get back together. But thank you so much, we really appreciate it, and we'll be back again sometime next week, and we'll be announcing soon on the Instagram @Deceive Reality Ireland. So thanks much everyone, and we talk to you again soon.